Welcome back, everybody. Carolina Keith here with you again. Got one more video for our beginner series here. It's another simple confluence indicator. Let's get into it. Okay, so this one's pretty darn simple, and it's a pretty old indicator and a pretty helpful indicator for what we're doing, which is keeping it simple, all right? This indicator is called Bollinger Bands. It was made by a guy named John Bollinger. Really smart guy who's still around today and still talks about how he uses and what he uses this indicator for. I'm going to show you how I use it, how I found it to be most effective for what we do. Let's start it up. Sweet, got the chart pulled up. This is our same XRP USD pair that we've been using before. I've got it all drawn out here. I've made some other stuff on the chart that we've used before in previous videos, which showed you how to do trend identification stuff. This is that same chart. Cool. So I'm going to show you now Bollinger Bands. We're going to go to our indicator section right up here. We'll type in Bollinger, B-O-L. It'll pop right up there for us. Click it and you're on. Put a star beside it if you want to save it. Here is the indicator. I'm going to take the candles off for a moment just so you can see the indicator. Now, what you see here are two different averages that go on the outside of the price. And depending on what the price is doing, these bands get tighter or more narrow or looser or wider as we go along. The orange line is the midline of the Bollinger Bands. It's pretty simple, and I'll show you how to use it now. Cool. First, what we look for is the number one thing is we want to see the Bollinger Bands get very, very tight together. We're going to start on a high time frame, and we'll work our way down into lower time frames like we always have. But while we have no candles on the screen, all right, let's just go ahead and point out the areas where it's tight, right? I got pretty tight Bollinger Bands here. I got pretty tight Bollinger Bands kind of here, right? I think we can agree on that. Cool. And then they're pretty tight back here. And they start getting really tight right over here in this corner. Do you see that? Very cool. So let's put our candles back on there and see what it looks like. Now, what you'll notice is when we have large movements of price, like we had right here, what was a very, very steep angle of retreat, the Bollinger Bands get very, very wide. When we go sideways, as you see here, the Bollinger Bands get very, very narrow. When those Bollinger Bands get narrow, we see volatility. What is volatility? Volatility is very simple to understand. It's when things start moving really sharply in either direction. The Bollinger Bands don't necessarily tell us what direction it's going, but it does show us when that volatility is coming in. That's why it's important to understand this is a confluence indicator, all right? We're not going to use this by itself. We're going to use this for its confluence, just like we did with our RSI and our MACD to find a better place on the chart. All right, we also can use this with support and resistance like we did before, and I'll show you on the chart here. That green box is support. We left that on the chart. Look what happens when the Bollinger Bands get tight and we're sitting on support, confluence. What happens? The price goes up. Very nice. What happens when we have price above support, kind of dancing around in no man's land, and the Bollinger Bands get tight? What happens? Down she goes. Back to support again. Very neat. We'll keep strolling right on over here. Right here is where we used our other stuff to find confluence on when to buy and sell based on trends, 821 EMA, et cetera, all right? So look what happened right before the thing really popped off and shot those green candles up. Tight Bollinger Bands on support. Excellent. That's exactly what we want to see. This shows us that probably a good idea to find a spot to buy before the buying ever starts. Very neat. That confluence helps us lock in when to do what we want to do. Now, on the other side of the trend line where we want to be, we see our red trend line right here. We see Bollinger Bands pinch in and this thing really takes off. Now, how about we go down to the daily chart and see if we can find confluence of the areas where the daily chart pinches in and the weekly chart pinches in. All right, I went down to the daily time frame, same place where we were looking a moment ago. And what do we see? Bollinger Bands get extremely tight. These red lines are the weekly Bollinger Bands getting tight, not the daily. All right. And as you see, these Bollinger Bands got tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until we got to the point where the weekly got tight and the daily got tight. Then we saw a snap up. Now we can mention that midline of the Bollinger Bands, which is that orange line right there. It's actually a moving average. I believe it's the 20-day moving average. Let me look and see real fast. 20 moving average. So 20 SMA. We went over simple moving averages before. It's the 20, all right, instead of 50. We went over 50, 100, 200, well, it's the 20. Sure enough, as we had tight Bollinger Bands start to squeeze in, we jumped over this midline right here. All right, you can use this midline as a simple filter for yes, no. Are we under it or are we over it? All right, you want to buy it when it's over here, right? Cool. You want to sell it when it's under. A little sketchy, right? Got under right here, kind of dangerous, right? So that's exactly the same place where our 821 EMA got a little sketchy, but again, we're still over support. Right down here, that red box is our support, our green and red box is our support level. We're fine. Even if it drops down just a little bit, we're okay. Everything's still perfectly fine. Like I said, this indicator is very simple. That's pretty much it. I try not to use it for anything else. You can use it for other stuff. For me, particularly, I like to just look for the confluence when I see the bands pinch in really tight or get really wide. All right, I moved it to the recent time right now where we're at today. Now, at the making of this video, it's going to be much different from when you guys actually see the video, but nonetheless, we're over the midline. Bollinger Bands got tight. Problem, you see this red line right here? That's a trend line. I just haven't zoomed out enough for you to see it. So even though my Bollinger Bands are tight and we're still under trend, I'm not going to get crazy with this and do something insane here and try to buy and sell this like crazy because we haven't broken the trend line yet. Again, confluence. I want to see multiple points. This trend line right here needs to be broken. I need to see the price get over it before I make a move. When that happens, then I see the Bollinger Bands get tight, start to squeeze in, and the price kind of rattle around a little bit inside those Bollinger Bands. Then we're ready to rock and roll. That's pretty much it for the Bollinger Bands. It's not too much that goes along with it. That's why I left it in the beginner series. Now, the next series that we do, there'll be a lot more videos and a lot more detail going over how I actually did my buys and sells previously. I'll give you tons of examples. Till then, you guys be good. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.